We want to take you now live to the United Nations in New York, where the UN Security Council is holding a briefing on UNRWA, the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, as Israel is banning the organization in Israel and the occupied Palestinian territories, and that's set to come into effect very soon. Let's listen in to what's being said there.
Will undermine the ceasefire. It will sabotage Gaza's recovery and political transition. Members of the Council, full implementation of the Knesset legislation will be disastrous. In Gaza, undermining UNRWA's operation will compromise the international humanitarian response. It will degrade the capacity of the United Nations just when humanitarian assistance must be scaled up significantly. This will only worsen the already catastrophic living condition of millions of Palestinians. The government of Israel claims that UNRWA services can be transferred to other entities. In fact, the agency's mandate to provide public-like services to an entire population is unique. Our capacity to directly provide primary health care for millions of Palestinians and to resume education for hundreds of thousands of children far exceeds that of any other entity. These services can only be transferred to a functioning state. The government of Israel claims that UNRWA plays a negligible role in providing humanitarian assistance in Gaza. In fact, UNRWA constitutes half the emergency response, with all other entities delivering the other half. Since October 2023, we have delivered two-thirds of all food assistance, provided shelter to over 1 million displaced persons, and vaccinated 250,000 of children against polio. Since the ceasefire began, UNRWA has brought in 60% of the food entering Gaza, reaching more than 500,000 people. We conduct some 17,000 medical consultations every day. Less quantifiable, but critical for the humanitarian response and the ceasefire, is the community acceptance. Palestinians know and trust UNRWA. For them, UNRWA is the doctors and nurses providing health care, the aid workers distributing food, and the mechanics and engineers building and repairing wells for clean drinking water. The agency's mere presence brings stability amid profound uncertainty. In the occupied West Bank, where violence is surging, ending UNRWA's operation will deprive Palestinian refugees of education and health care. The Palestinian Authority has made clear that it does not have the financial resource or capacity to compensate for the loss of UNRWA services. In occupied East Jerusalem, the government of Israel has ordered UNRWA to vacate its premises and cease operations by Thursday. This will affect approximately 70,000 patients and more than 1,000 students. The deputy mayor has called for a public celebration of UNRWA's expulsion from East Jerusalem, opposite the headquarters of our West Bank field office in the Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood. It is on this land that local authorities are planning to build illegal settlements. The relentless assault on UNRWA is harming the lives and future of Palestinians across the occupied Palestinian territory. It is eroding the trust in the international community, jeopardizing prospects for peace and security. Mr. President, the Knesset legislation defies resolution of this Council and the General Assembly. It flouts the ruling of the International Court of Justice. It disregards that UNRWA is a mechanism established by the General Assembly to provide assistance to Palestinian refugees, pending a political answer to the question of Palestine. Implementing the legislations makes a mockery of international law and imposes massive constraints on UNRWA's operation. We are determined, however, to stay and deliver until it is no longer possible to do so. This is not without risk for our Palestinian colleagues, who face an exceptionally hostile operating environment fostered in part by a fierce disinformation campaign. Member of the Council, the government of Israel is investing significant resources to portray the agency as a terrorist organization and our staff as terrorist or terrorist sympathizer. Billboards and ads accusing UNRWA of terrorism recently appeared in major cities around the world. They were paid for by the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Google ad campaigns redirect those seeking information about the agency to websites replete with disinformation. The absurdity of anti-UNRWA propaganda does not diminish the threat it poses to our staff, especially those in the occupied West Bank and in Gaza, where 273 of our colleagues have been killed. It sets a precedent for governments to accuse a United Nations entity of terrorism as a pretext to clamp down on human rights. It sets a precedent for criminalizing humanitarian assistance and protection. This year, propaganda efforts spearheaded by the Israeli Foreign Ministry received a boost of $150 million. The political attacks on the agency are motivated by the desire to strip Palestinians of the refugee status, thereby unilaterally changing the long-established parameter for a political solution. The objective is to deny Palestinian refugees the right to self-determination and erase their history and identity. But let me be clear. The right of Palestinian refugees to protection and assistance are not derived from UNRWA's mandate. They exist independently of the agency. And if UNRWA ceases to protect and assist Palestinian refugees, their rights will not only remain, but there will be much greater emphasis on the right to return or to be resettled, for which UNRWA has no mandate. Mr. President, a ceasefire in Gaza must be followed by a political transition that includes an orderly conclusion of UNRWA's mandates and the handover of its public-like services to empowered and prepared Palestinian institutions. This is a path now pursued by the Global Alliance for the Implementation of the Two-State Solution, led by Saudi Arabia, the European Union, and the League of Arab States. Only a political pathway of this nature can ensure the protection and welfare of Palestinian refugees and peace and security in the region and beyond. A clear choice lies before us. We can allow UNRWA to implode due to the Knesset legislation and the suspension of fundings by key donors. The repercussions of this implosion will not be confined to national borders and will only further destabilize the region. Alternatively, we can allow the agency to progressively conclude its mandate within the framework of a political process. UNRWA was always meant to be temporary. A fair and lasting political solution would allow the agency to hand over its services and workforce to a Palestinian administration. UNRWA has much to offer in support of a political solution. The agency is the largest provider of primary health care in Gaza and the second largest in the West Bank. Our health services and expertise are integral to building a strong national health system. UNRWA has also a pivotal role to play in education. In Gaza today, 650,000 girls and boys are living in the rubble, learning nothing more than how to survive. They have already lost more than 2 years of learning. Absent a full-fledged state, only UNRWA has the capacity to bring these children back to learning. So great is the enthusiasm for resuming learning in Gaza that more than 260,000 children, half of them girls, enrolled in our online learning platform this month. If we fail to resume education in Gaza and to preserve it in the occupied West Bank, we will sacrifice an entire generation of Palestinian children. Member of the Council, The threat posed by political effort to dismantle UNRWA is compounded by financial challenges, with key donors deciding to end or reduce their contribution to the agency. I'm appealing for an urgent increase in financial support to UNRWA, the early disbursement of allocated funds, and a review of funding currently on hold. I also take this opportunity to underscore the agency's long-standing commitment to neutrality. A detailed presentation at UNRWA's Advisory Commission meeting last November made clear that our high-level action plan to implement the recommendation of the Colonna report is on track. We will also continue to take all necessary steps to investigate credible allegations made against the agency and its personnel. Mr. President, member of the Council, implementing the Knesset legislation will heighten instability and deepen despair in the occupied Palestinian territory at a critical moment. I'm seeking your decisive intervention in support of peace and stability in the occupied Palestinian territory and the broader region. First, push back against the implementation of the Knesset legislation. UNRWA's personnel and services are integral to the success of the ceasefire. Second, insist on a genuine political path forward that delineates UNRWA's role as a provider of education and healthcare. The agency is essential for ensuring a viable political transition. Finally, ensure that the financial crisis does not abruptly end UNRWA's life-saving work. The agency cannot continue to operate in the face of extraordinary challenges without adequate resources. In closing, I would like to share with you a message received from a young person in Gaza last week. It is a stark reminder of the heavy responsibility we bear. Quote, "I'm writing to you from the rubble of a home that once was a place of warmth and life. Now, my days are spent searching for the most basic necessities, like flour to feed my family. What truly breaks me is my helplessness in the face of children. Their innocent eyes seek safety I cannot provide, an answer I do not have. Around us, the elderly sit in silence, their hearts weighed down by decades of loss and suffering. And here I am, dying 1,000 times every day as I think of all that I cannot do for them." Unquote. Unlike the author of this message, we are in a position to do something. It only requires your decisive action and leadership. Thank you.
I thank Mr. Lazzarini.
We've been listening there to Philippe Lazzarini, the UNRWA chief, the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, briefing the United Nations Security Council as an Israeli law banning UNRWA in Israel and the occupied Palestinian territories is due to come into effect. Israel has accused UNRWA of so-called terrorism, saying Hamas fighters infiltrated the organization, which UNRWA has denied. Philippe Lazzarini saying there that banning the organization, especially at this time, will undermine the ceasefire in Gaza and worsen the humanitarian conditions there, which are already appalling. Let's bring in Gabriel Elizondo, who's live for us at the United Nations. Lazzarini, Gabe, laying out there why UNRWA's operations in Gaza and the occupied Palestinian territories are so crucial.
That's right. He's really making a call to the world, really, to support UNRWA. And he's been doing this, and the UN has been doing this, the Secretary General as well, for months now, because this Israeli legislation has been passed months ago. We knew that this day was coming, but now it is very urgent because this Israeli set of legislation essentially banning UNRWA's work is set to go into effect later this week. So this really is, if you will, almost a last call by the Commissioner General of UNRWA, Philippe Lazzarini, to the world to do everything they can to try to protect UNRWA's mandate. The world does stand behind UNRWA because they voted on this, a General Assembly resolution late last year supporting the mandate of UNRWA was voted in favor by 159 member states, the overwhelming majority of the world supports UNRWA. But clearly, there's a couple things at play here. Number one is 60% of the aid going into Gaza is going in via UNRWA just since the ceasefire. Clearly, a lot is at stake here.
Thank you very much, Gabe, for that. Gabriel Elizondo live for us at the United Nations in New York.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.